Thanks everyone for coming, and excited to present this first session of the day. I'm going to be talking about landing pages and content strategy, and this is part of the higher ed track, so all my examples are higher education, but the concepts are not. They're applicable to any industry, any context. And my background, for those of you who I haven't met yet, my name is Suzanne Dergacheva, and I'm one of the co-founders of Evolving Web. Alex was talking all about us earlier, so I won't reintroduce the company, but my role has changed over the years. I started off as a developer. I did a lot of project management. I dabbled in design a little bit, and now when I work on projects, it's usually in discovery. I work with our UX designers, sometimes doing discovery workshops and figuring out what the user needs are and mapping it to content strategy. And I love writing. AI has kind of stolen my favorite part of the job a little bit. But this whole thing of being passionate and infusing our value into our work, even if we're using AI to help us out, I think is a great message and really aligns with what I'm talking about today, which is all about the strategy part. So I read a lot of briefs for website redesign projects. You know, our agency's often brought in at this phase when we're thinking of, a rebrand, redoing all our content, let's rethink our strategy. Sometimes it's at the level of, a whole organization, sometimes it's one site. And a trend that I've seen, certainly maybe starting about 10 years ago, but certainly in the last 5 years, most of these projects have some kind of value that they want to add in terms of content. And often it's all about, we want to have more storytelling content. We want to have more engaging content. We want users to really understand our brand, and we want to do that through telling these stories. And so people are asking for ways of adding components to their site. They want to have more flexible tools for content editors. That's what they're asking for. And then when we go about building that, what we often end up pitching or deciding to build are these component-based designs. So what does that mean? It means, pages where the content editor can really come in and control not just the content, but really the structure. Component-based designs, design systems, and component libraries. And so it's really fun to work on. You can build really beautiful landing pages all built with, components, and you build the blocks of the page together. You have some flexibility on the styling. It sells great, it works well, fantastic. And so what we end up investing in are these design systems and component libraries, and there's other talks today about these things. But just like at a high level, right, like design systems are there to help you break down the needs and the language of your website into these atomic pieces. And then you design all those little pieces so that when they fit together, it looks coherent. So when you design a new page, you're not starting from scratch every time. You're using the building blocks that have been tested. And there's talks today also about making sure that all of these pieces are accessible and brand aligned and all of that. Great stuff. So you're going to end up with this really cohesive design. This is a screenshot from a design system we built from a public health system. So they have different brands, different sites, different needs, but it all fits together, it all looks coherent. And when a content editor builds a page with your components, it should be a recipe for success. The other thing that we often invest in, and there's again talks about today, are landing page builders. So ways to, on the CMS side, to make it easy for you to place these components on the page and choose how they're going to look, drag and drop. We love it. All that flexibility, all those design of the pieces is great, but often that's where we invest mostly in. We're investing in the pieces that go into the puzzle, but we're giving a lot of flexibility along with that. And we're saying, content editors, here's some pages we built. Now this is your communications platform. Go take it and run with it. And that can often give them something super flexible, which they love, but it can result in a pizza. I don't know, do you use this expression, pizza? Maybe it's a Quebec thing. I'm from Quebec, we speak French. It's like, oh, You design what looks like a pizza, and it's like not a beautiful pizza. It's like, you know, something that a kid decides to put everything on their pizza. Pages can really lack focus, right? They can be too many calls to action. The content editors are like, great, we have 10 things we want students to do. Let's put this on every page. You can end up with lack of balance between the visuals and the text, too much text, or even too many visuals sometimes, too many saturated components because there's options around styling, or there's no options around styling and all of your components are really like bold. And then sometimes there's actually no clear next step, or you have too many steps. Content editors are like, great, we can make everything into a landing page, and then you have all these pages that don't really serve a purpose in the journey. And so this can even happen, believe it or not, with really beautifully designed components. So, you know, happens all the time. We launch a new site, we give all these tools, and then, you know, we're revisiting with the client certain aspects of the website, and we realize, like, oh, even though we gave you these nice building blocks, you did find a way to combine them into a pizza. Or there are still or there are still too many calls to action. Like, believe it or not, it can happen, even if you start with the best design. Okay, so what is the secret to success? How do you actually avoid the pizza and have some clarity here? So it's hard because every time you design a page, you don't want to have to go back to Figma or like get a designer in the room. You want to give the tools to people. And often the tools mean something that looks a little bit closer to templated content than flexible landing page. But people aren't going to like that. They're going to want their drag and drop. They're going to want their flexibility. So what you can do is you can create a framework. And so what I'm trying to give you today is kind of a generic framework. Like, here are the types of landing pages probably all of your websites need. There are probably some others that you need depending on your specific use cases. And how can you use this to kind of give good examples, best practices, and guide content editors and teams to success. Okay, so I'm going to show, I have a lot of videos and examples today. And so I'm going to start off with a page that is built with those components I just showed, that is a home page. And I just want you to think about, like, maybe why is this a good landing, or why is this a good page? And it's, just to give you some context, it's a Faculty of Engineering website for a university, a master university. And when they started off this project with us, their goal was to create a site that better reflected a lot of their diversity and their co-op programs, and kind of make them seem a little bit more unique than the general university brand. That goes kind of fast. I'll show it again. What I like about this page is that it has some big messages, it has some bold statements, but it also mixes that with some real content, like actual facts, and then the things like news or research actually back up the bigger statements. So it has a mix of the messaging and the content to support it. And so when I look at a page like this, often what makes this type of page successful is the visual impression it makes. If you're just kind of blurring your eyes and seeing, like, does the page look balanced? Certainly here you see kind of this mixture of imagery, but lots of components that are purely white space, so it kind of goes back and forth. The content is aligning with the message. You have to trust me on that because you can't read everything. And there's the right level of detail. So it's the home page. We don't want to throw all the details of every reason to go to the school, every program right there. But it has enough detail, it has something to back up these big statements and show that there's actual substance here. All right, so I'm going to jump into the 5 types of landing pages now. And maybe you want to think about a project you're working on, your own website, if there's one big website you have. And the 5 types of landing pages I came up with are a why landing page. This is a big one. This is going to be like your home page, but also things like that page that talks about how you have the best research program, obviously. Decision-making landing pages, where you're actually, it's like a product landing page, but I'm guessing most of us here don't sell things that we think of as products. Continuing studies maybe like have more like an actual checkout system, but the page where someone can actually, you know, walk away with a decision. Wayfinding landing pages, which I'll explain. Lead generation pages, maybe that's self-explanatory. And then dashboards, which we maybe don't always think of as landing page, but I think kind of play a role here as well. So I'll start off with that big why. And so maybe this is your homepage. I didn't want to start with the homepage because that's kind of a rookie mistake when we're designing websites. Don't start with the homepage. But the thing is that when you think about messaging and content and the thought you put into something like your homepage, often you want to hint at that on other pages. And so it helps to have really thought through the story of why right at the start. And I think that the goal when you're designing a page like this is to show a user that they're in the right place, but not that there could be 10 right places that they're in, but that somehow this is uniquely the right place. And of course, that's not going to be true for every user, but you want to have enough about your differentiators there that users can really see like what's going on here. And so to really dive into some higher ed examples, for example, I did a little content workshop with a community college recently, and they have two streams of programs, some that are for credit and some that are not for credit. And they were using this terminology right there on their homepage and their menu that kind of explained this, but it was so jargony, it wasn't even clear to the staff. They had changed the name of the things 3 times. And so that whole message about, you can be here to get your degree, or you can be here to take courses more for fun or for just supporting whatever you want to do, it wasn't coming through. And that kind of needed to be the main message of the page, but they were skirting around it because it was hard to communicate. A lot of schools have this where they're trying to do the big and small thing. I don't know if it's just people I've been talking to recently. It's like, oh, we are part of the biggest university in Canada, University of Toronto, but we're actually this tiny campus, and we're this older university that kind of is got confederated into the bigger university, so we're big and we're small. And that's such a great message, actually. Like, as a potential student, I think, well, that's what I should have studied there. It really comes across so well. But if that message isn't the thing that the user comes away with after glancing at your why, then you haven't been successful. So here's some other more specific examples with some screenshots. So this is the homepage for University of Georgia Center. So this is a really interesting project because University of Georgia Center, if I just asked you what that was, anybody have any idea? What's a center? You're all, most of the room is higher and you're all like, what? That could be anything.
Video one to give some context.
Oh,
that's a screenshot. Though.
It's just a screenshot. Yeah, so it's like, oh, it's a building. But, okay, great. But we have down here, and this is just the first, above the fold, we have down here some different things that hint at it. Look, it says university, but doesn't this look a lot like, a hotel website already? So they're actually, it's hard to communicate what they do. They used to have 5 different websites because they just gave up and said, we'll just make different websites for everything we do. But they actually have courses you can take there in continuing studies. They have events that you can host, so we could do the next EvolveDigital at the UGA Center. They have a hotel, they have a restaurant, and they have youth programs that they run as well. So it's actually kind of hard to express that whole mission, but the homepage has to do that. And I don't have a whole video here, but even on the first fold of the screen, you know, we're trying to indicate these things. My next one is, yeah, so this is York University. So they're kind of a big university in Toronto, like one of the biggest, if you wanted to just see where there are the most programs I can take. You know, what's a school I can get into, but that's big and well-known and respected. Like, it's just kind of like a great option for a lot of people in the city. And they have, you know, they need to show some differentiation, though, even though they're kind of like this choice that's like, oh, it's an obvious choice for people who live in the city and know it, but they still have to be able to communicate how they're somehow unique. And so when we do things like pick the images, we want those images to tell more than one story. So we want, you know, this is a building, but it's also a person. We want to show that we're big, but we're also people. We want to have student spotlights. We want it to feel, you know, like, again, that big and small at the same thing. The individual experience, but also that big university feel. And now I have no notes. Okay, I'm going to see what's going to play. Let's all find out together. Oh, okay, sorry, I'm going to pause. I'm going to give some intro on this. How do I pause my own video? Right? Okay. So my next example is a good example because it's part of a bit of a rebrand project. So anyone here undergoing a rebrand at the moment? Yeah? Oh, everybody's calm. You're all like, oh, we're good. That's too much work. We don't have the budget this year.
I think Princeton's going through a rebrand.
Princeton's going through a rebrand. Yeah, I'm not talking. There's another presentation about that. This rebrand was really interesting because this is a university you might not have heard of. Again, it's a Canadian university, Queen's University, and they had this, you know, huge application numbers. No problem. They came to us and said, we don't need more applicants. That's not our issue here. They were having a reputational problem because they're so popular. They have all these, you know, young people coming to campus. They're all highly, you know, have top grades at their high schools. They get to this small university town and it's a party school, right? It's a party school. And so they have this reputation. People, you know, potential faculty are like, oh, am I gonna move? You know, am I gonna move from, you know, Germany, where I'm happy doing my research, to Queens, where I have this great opportunity? They Google it, they see all about the party school. So they needed to build this reputation as like, no, we are serious. And their website was, you know, very text-based, classic, you know, lack of good brand on the main website. And so they wanted to orient the whole thing around, we're research-driven. And, you know, not for faculty researching, but also for, you know, potential grad students, future researchers, all of that. Really reputation and exercise in building that reputation. And so hopefully this is going to start. Oh, no, that's the wrong. I want to go back. Oh, no. We don't want to see all about that. There we go. Okay, let's try again. So this is their homepage. And they say lots of nice things about world-leading university. But I want to pause here because one of the things that we really tried to work with them on, it was the whole governance around how they select content to be included on such a homepage. And so they had, in the past, you know, a magazine, university magazine that was feeding content into the homepage, pretty typical setup, but it was aggregating content in a way that you would think like, okay, it's the recent news about the university. And you looked at that news, and some of it was much more, you know, it would just end up being things like, you know, who was appointed to something, or, you know, some update about campus, and it wasn't necessarily really giving off that we're a research-driven university vibe. And so the way that the news is presented now, the way that the categories are picked, the way that the specific items are selected, it's more designed to show the impact, to show that they're research-oriented. So it says top stories, but that's a lie. It's just the stuff that they really want you to see. They want you to see we're technology-focused, we're engineering-focused, we have this global impact. And so that was part of it. So they have the nice brand stuff too. They put we put lots of effort into the design, but the content strategy also had to back up those bigger statements. Okay, gonna try to do the next one. Yeah. This is a small college. So this is actually small, you know, like so how many of you do you think, well, so those of you in higher ed, so having this kind of message about like, we have small class sizes. Does anybody have that? Small class sizes, yeah? It's a pretty common thing where people want to seem like, okay, you're gonna have this intimate experience. Loyalist College, they made this part of their brand. So they just put the word small right in there. And they are a small college, but they really leaned into it and did it in this really bold way. So you see this big typography that they use. Small is powerful. You know, that is kind of a bold statement to make. So they were all about that. And then we designed them a homepage, which I think is a great looking homepage. But an interesting thing is we put a video at the top. Now, I have mixed feelings about this. I'm not such a fan of the video at the top. And 9 times out of 10, you actually look at these videos and you think, do I need to see all these glass buildings? You know, sometimes the buildings are empty. Like, they look impressive from a certain point of view, but when you really try and put yourself into that student mindset, they don't always pull it off. And so what I like about this video is the way that it's edited, the selection they've done. I think they've really done actually a good job of making it punchy. They developed it themselves, but the fact that they've positioned it here on the homepage is like, again, kind of a bold move, but it does, I think, show quite a bit of their personality in a way that's pretty authentic. Another thing about video, yes?
I know Eric is presenting on homepage videos.
Come to my talk, 225.
Oh, yeah.
25 minutes.
How did I miss that?
Talk all about it.
And his talk is based on a study, a UX study of whether they're a good idea or not. And I'm dying to know the answer, but I guess we won't know until we come.
Me too.
I think she makes a point about just showing the buildings versus showing people actually. In the
Showing
experience.
people. Well, they have to be doing something interesting because just people's also not. But yeah, this one I think does great. It does a great job. A small anecdote. I did for a very short time. I worked at a tourism Quebec, this big company in Quebec, and I went in there all the time to their office because I was on-site consulting. It had to be in person, and oh man, everybody was watching their homepage video nonstop, and I just thought, this thing cannot be cached enough. You're killing some trees or something. Okay, next one. Am I on the next thing? No, sorry. All right, so the same homepage, same website. They also use video in another place, but I think that this is really stand out because they have these video, pretty typical, like, okay, we want to have student faces, student stories. They have this component, but the thing I love about it is that you don't have to watch the videos for it to also have a really great impact. The way that they've, selected the different students, how they're standing, the preview screenshot actually does a great job of showing something and telling a story. And then, of course, these are more functional videos, so they play a different role. And then just image selection in general. So like I said before, images are big for your why pages. You don't want just buildings or close-ups of people. You have to show something that's adding that value and telling that story. And almost you have to think that every image has to play a couple roles. So if you have brand pillars, like literally what are the 2 brand pillars that each image represents. And investing in something like an image style guide is just going to make creating pages like this easier, because you'll have a starting point of stuff you can use. And so if you're creating a why landing page, of course you're going to have at least one on your website. You know, maybe I can think of like, yeah, the home page, but also maybe a page that talks about your research, a page that talks about your co-op program. You're going to have smaller why storytelling that you're doing in other parts. You want to convince the user completely of the why in that page. I went to a page in a site I was auditing this week, and it had all kinds of links to the why. It said, you know, you want to know what the benefits are, click here. You want to know about students and what they think, go to our blog. And it was all off-site links, and it kind of gave you the sense of like, okay, they've put the thought into this, they know what the point of this is, they know they need to tell the why, but they're not doing it there. They're making you go off into all these other directions. You also want to back that up with proof, even if it's just hinting at the proof, like a tag on a news item, and your message has to support it. So I think this is a Canadian problem. Some people are just like, oh, we don't want to say that we're the best. But you kind of do have to say it in a way. And then you have to present your uniqueness clearly. So that's another thing. Like, don't leave this ambiguation about what your purpose is. Okay, enough about the why. Let's get to some more functional pages. Wayfinding landing pages. So I don't know, maybe this is a term I invented, but people maybe call them also persona-based landing pages. So if you're thinking about pages on your website that are really designed to give users in one persona, one audience, or one role that they're currently playing, one top task that they currently have, what are all the resources, what are all the links, what are all the things I need to be successful? And so you have to maybe start by thinking through who are the types of users who would benefit from this. Maybe more of your internal users. So in higher education, I often think of internal users as like your staff, your faculty, your current students, even your alumni. They're users that are familiar with your brand. They're not going to be spending time on your why. They're going to be more focused on like, you know, where are all those links to things I need, or as an alumni, you know, what's my relationship with the university, what can I do? Maybe they want to get more to the action. So I'm going to show some examples of this. So current students, this is a tricky one because it can just be so extensive what you want current students to see. I think this page is interesting because it actually tries to balance, I think, what the university wants students to see, to look at first, and what students probably actually asked for when we did the user research. So frequently access, I mean, it's just a lot of links, but it's all in one place. And it doesn't come across as a big list of links, but it also doesn't try and have like a huge banner at the top that blocks you from scrolling down too much. So that one's nice. The one for loyalist, of course, the brand is bold, so there's this tendency to just like a lot of saturation. And yet they have like, you know, some pretty useful links there. That's their version. And then also these types of landing pages don't have to just be persona-based. I mean, it's pretty typical now to have like, okay, here are all my personas that aren't prospective students. I'll just link to landing pages for them. But a page like this could also be useful for someone in a specific mode, like they're researching, can I afford this school? There's so many resources just about financial aid. The terminology is confusing. They want to have one place that they can come to. So you think about like maybe this is a page they're going to want to bookmark to find all of that out. And this page kind of mixes the resources with actually disambiguating some things, having some useful content right on the page. And so some thought was put into like what level of detail needs to go here. And for this type of audience, because it's less of a sales mode that you're in, you can be a bit more, you know, be more detail oriented and think of it as a really functional page. So for these types of pages, you want to think about the ordering, the kind of emphasis that you are putting on content. Like, what do you want these users to do? That's kind of number one. Secondly, like, make it bookmarkable. What are they going to find the most useful? Obviously, looking at analytics to see. Maybe you do some interviews with your users and they don't tell you, actually, this is a PDF I use all the time. But when you look at the analytics, you see how many people access that content. It's going to hint to the fact that you might want to be linking to it. You want to lightly reinforce your brand without giving users a lot of messages that they've heard before. And you want it to be easy to update, because think of it as like a governance thing. You want content folks to be able to spend more time updating the why content than pages like this. And so there shouldn't be like requirements to add, like pick a bunch of styling options or add images to create content on pages like this. Okay, next type of landing page, we actually want to get people to decide something. They've heard all our messaging about why. We have some functional pages to orient them in the right place. But when it comes down to it, there are going to be pages on your website that are there to help users actually make a decision. And so typically in higher ed, I just keep thinking of program pages, but I would love to hear other examples. Maybe, if we think of other industries, certainly anything that's like your product is going to be a page like this. And it's hard because, sometimes you're not actually using your website to sell. It's more like it's part of a decision-making process, but the link is not actually there to buy. So that can make it hard to measure pages like this. But let's just talk about how we want to build them. So if we're thinking of program pages, we want to give users enough of the what, why, and how to actually convert them all in one page, which makes it seem like this page has to pull a lot of weight, which it does. So I'll show you some examples. And yet we don't want to overwhelm users either. And so program pages have the tendency to have a ton of accordions on them. Sometimes they have tabs, sometimes they have tons of external links. And I think it's hard to strike that balance, especially if you're building a page where sometimes there's content about admissions requirements that are the same across all your programs. You don't want to duplicate that everywhere. So there's a lot of governance thought that goes into these pages as well. Okay, so my first example. So this is a design school. So they have, a big visual up at the top. And then they go into some highlights. They do have a few accordions, but the accordions are there to show you really detailed information. So that's all about like the actual courses you'd be studying every year. Then they have some storytelling, like they have a student spotlight. It's all right there on the page. You don't have to click off the page to see what students are saying about the program. And then one thing that I like is that their CTAs are really clear and they're always in the same place. So although you might give a lot of flexibility actually about the exact content to include on different programs, I know sometimes you have to get like academic people involved and they all want to have their own opinion about what should go on their program page. But if you say, no, we can't change where the call to action is, it's a template. Like it has to be there, these are the links, that's what you get. I think that's doing a really nice service, especially for people like looking at multiple options. It's very consistent. And in this case, it's sticky, so it's, I thought it was sticky. Anyway, it's pretty clear. And so I think the rule of thumb in terms of what goes on these pages is if you have like exceptions, like maybe a student coming from, like a transfer student or something, like there might be reasons why they have to link off to other pages to see certain things, but for the most part, you want to put all the information on the one page. Okay, let's see if I have another, try and show my next example. Oh yeah, my next example, so this is back to that engineering school. So it's a little more engineering looking in terms of design. But I like how, that there's certain components like the requirements that are right front and center. They do have the program differentiators there, so co-op is a big thing for them. They make that really prominent on the page. They also, maybe it's the same designer who did this. We have the same kind of courses are available through the accordions. And then there's quite a bit of detail about the different options you might have in terms of future study, in terms of career options. So you do scroll a little bit, but the way the flow is, it really prioritizes what users have to know versus more nice to know stuff. Okay, let's go to the takeaways. So decision making landing pages. You want to really think about where the calls to action go. You don't want users to have to open 5 tabs to research one program. They should open 5 tabs to research 5 programs. They're going to be doing that anyway. It'll be way easier for them. You have to tell a mini version of your why. So that can be captured in the description, in the visuals. You need visuals, but you should not overdo it because it's a long page anyway. And there should be one thing, at least on the page, that sparks imagination. And that doesn't always have to be the same thing. Maybe it's that video up at the top for the design, because design's such a visual thing, it's easy for them. Maybe it's the thing about the co-op program for the engineering school, but you have to have something that makes people excited because you're selling. And then try to use the template, but you might have to make it flexible to please all those stakeholders. All right, lead generation. How many people run campaigns and do advertising? Yeah, so as soon as you're paying for clicks, somehow those pages get lots of attention, right? It's like, oh, we're going to link, we have to pay how much to get someone to click on this link? We better put some thought into this. But sometimes you have pages that do lead generation for you that you're not paying anything for, and they also deserve some attention. So the goal of these pages is really to make that great first impression and also give users a reason to engage, lowering the barrier of entry to do so. So something like a page about your open house coming up, this might be a page you're like, oh, well, we have to put the open house, it's coming up in 4 months, people might plan ahead, we just have to put this here. Well, it has to have some way to actually engage and capture those users. So at minimum, this is missing something like a form or a really prominent link. But ideally, you have the form right on your lead capture page. And you want to think about, maybe there's some pages that you're not thinking of as lead generation pages that could be. I think it's great, this page, it's so interesting coming to New York City because so many schools put so much money into advertising, on the subway. And I go up to all the QR codes and see, what are they linking to? And sometimes it's like, oh, it's this. And it's it's great because it's telling you something, it's giving you a CTA, but it doesn't really,
They expect you to memorize everything you saw on the ad.
Yeah, they're why am I here again? But it's not capturing that whole why message. I think this page does a pretty good job. It's a lot to ask because you want it to be above the fold, you want the form right there. You want it to be kind of a standalone page that someone can just link into from without all the context of seeing your other content. So these pages, I think, are hard to design well. But yeah, thinking about what these pages are for you and how to set them up. Of course, another type of page like this might be actually a donation page, has a similar role, something you might pay for a click to, something that's part of a campaign, and then you want some action. And something to think about is is there a backup? Let's say somebody comes across this, they are engaged, they're convinced by your message, but they're not going to give right now, or they can't come to your open house at that time. Is there kind of some backup alternative that they can do that's a minimum level of effort? So a newsletter or some other engagement. So yeah, those types of pages, you want to make that impression. You want to give something really specific that they can do. And you want to consider how the user arrives on the page. So is it always going to be through that QR code because it's a unique link, or could it be coming from, you give it to a marketing team and they're like, well, let's use this link everywhere, and then it ends up, maybe lacking some context because it's not part of a campaign. And it's nice that these pages are evergreen too. So if it's something like an open house, how is that page going to survive if people come to it after the open house is over? Does it convert to some other call to action after the fact? Okay, the last kind of page I want to talk about are dashboards. And these are much more functional, so we might not be thinking of them as landing pages. But I think they're definitely part of that user journey. And they're also pages that can be very visual and can help us tell a story. And so how do I define a dashboard? It can be a search page. It can be a page that really hones in on one content type. Something like a program finder is pretty typical in higher education, but it could also be something like, here's what we're doing with all our research money, let us show you our impact. And so these kind of pages have an opportunity to summarize impact, to summarize value, and then also allow users to really deep dive into the product pages or the other content that you have. And so some ways that you can do that, let's see what this is. So this is a program page, very functional. But what I like about it is that the filters that have been picked here are really designed to be, to show the users that they have a lot of study options. Students often are looking for I want really flexibility in how I can follow my studies. Maybe I'm a single mom, maybe I have a job, whatever. And so schools can say on their homepage, oh, we have flexible options, but unless you come to a page like this and it actually is showing you, oh yeah, I can study part-time, I can do hybrid, I can just go to all these different campuses. If you don't see that right here, then it doesn't really mean anything. And so having a page that kind of has been thought through in terms of the values and the differentiators, even when it comes to picking filters, I think that's valuable. And what you show in the preview of the content as well can do the same thing. This is another page. This is to show research impact. So this is a page, not a program finder, but it's a page that's going to showcase, a lot of different research projects, and kind of the idea is that it visualizes that for you in the first screen, so before you even dive into any specific search. And then if you do go to the more list view, again, you can kind of see some of the impact, you can see the filters, you get an idea of the scope of research, and so the way it's designed is to show you that even before you click on a specific research project. I'm going to skip that. So dashboard landing pages, these pages play a big role in telling your story. It's nice that they have something about them that reflects the brand, reflects the why, but it's hard to do that on such a functional page, so that might come through more in filters or labels. And it's nice that this page just runs itself, so it's totally automated and doesn't require any curation. So I threw a lot of things at you, different types of landing pages, different ways of thinking about your content. And before I kind of wrap up, I also want to just reiterate that all of this does have to tie back to a journey. So my first message was, you can design these beautiful components, but you have to know how to put them together on a page. That goes for the pages too. The pages are also just little pieces. They have to fit together into a user journey that makes sense. And of course, we design beautiful user journeys and then users click all over the place, but it's still worth doing. And so I'm sure many of you have done user journey mapping for your projects. You've thought through who's our main user, what steps do they go through, what are they thinking through at every step. And of course, this is part of hopefully this is an exercise that you've done and that you think back to as you're creating content. Often we're thinking through, what are users thinking at each stage? What are their concerns? What actions are they going to take? And what I love to do when we do user journey mapping is I love to highlight, and even to visually do this with stickers or, marking up a whiteboard, is really highlighting what are those big content opportunities in the user journey. So what are the things that we think are really going to move the needle for somebody to get them successful and to get them to the next step? So for example, we've talked through all these examples in the presentation, but like maybe at the outset, it's kind of some of this messaging around having a small community in a big university that's really going to resonate. Maybe we realize we need to really highlight our part-time offerings, the co-op program options, maybe in the application process. That starts to really be a differentiator before they decide to apply. Maybe there's a certain event that we do that's super successful, like being a student for a day. I love that idea. Maybe it's just a campus visit, but you can call it student for a day, and suddenly students get excited. So you can think about the different opportunities you have to highlight content and what in your experience, in the user's telling or in institutional experience, what's really going to move the needle? What are the big opportunities? And then make sure that these actually map to where you're investing time in your landing pages. You might have tons of other pages that end up getting built, but if you can decide what are these big touch points, and are those landing pages really pulling their weight and doing their job, that can help you focus. And if you did user journey mapping 5 years ago, maybe worthwhile revisiting if you're just focusing more on a content strategy improvement. So my big takeaways, landing pages, creating the content for them requires some design thinking, but hopefully not a designer, because hopefully you've done some of that component library magic, and you have some good options for the content editors. Look out for filler pages that just add clicks. Of course, you're going to have lots of pages you end up having to build, but if you think about, as you're, heuristically testing your own website, does every page need to be there? Does every page really fulfill one of these roles? And then document the best. So once you have something that you think works well, put a spotlight on that and try and get content folks to know about those pages. It's helpful to build templates if you can, to be hey, you can just clone this existing page. That's a huge help. People love that. But also having some links to good content and kind of showing what works well. That's the best kind of documentation. It's better than a technical user guide. It can even be part of your technical user guide. You can put links to things if people are using that. That's all I have, and I hope there's a bit of time for questions, so I'd love to hear what people think. Yes?
With the University of Georgia, one hotels, classes, and all those sorts of things, did you put a little text box off on the right and say, okay, here's what the University of Georgia provides, this, and this? Just like one sentence.
Yeah, that in the design, I didn't have a video for that one. In the design, it's right after that top screen, there is it's 2 sentences. It's kind of the most you can expect someone to actually read, but the least amount of words it takes to describe the difference. And then as you go down the page, of course, if you look at it, you see the images of the different things, so even if you're not reading everything, you get a sense. And then when you click through the site, the different landing pages for each area are then sub-branded lightly with colors and things to make that kind of clear. So there's different methods that are used throughout. Is there a question? Yeah?
We have some small websites. They only have limited content for the landing page. It's just a short introduction of this section. Also some subsection under this section, with the content list title and summary. Then some maybe related links. That's it. So sometimes I just wonder whether we should keep a landing page, like when you click the primary menu item, when you land it as this kind of landing page, or you should just go to the first sub-menu item of that section. Whether this one is used enough, but like you said, I just don't know, how we can decide whether we should keep it. Should we use Google Analytics to decide it?
It's hard to use Google Analytics to fully make the decision because the fact that you're linking to the page means people will click on it, even if it's not useful. Maybe, of course, that's really fast. You can do a very small amount of usability testing, but you can also just decide based on the fact that you look at the page and you know that it's not communicating anything. You can decide to remove it just based on that. Maybe think about, is there some messaging there that maybe belongs on some of the subpages? Because maybe you're kind of summarizing the information, but maybe those other pages can do both summarizing and giving more of the details.
What's your thoughts on more scroll-based animations that we're starting to see more of?
Yeah.
Not necessarily on load, but even Apple set the standard, the video doesn't play unless you scroll.
Unless you scroll down.
Not saying video, but there's a lot of that coming up now.
I think it's fantastic, but it's like you can't just be like, oh, we're gonna add animation and then
You have to be careful.
you have to be careful. Yeah, you have to think about it's almost like you shouldn't even realize there's animation on the page if it's doing its job.
Yeah.
It should kind of make it seem more of a dynamic, make it seem more lively, and then that takes more work to make something that's less visible. And then also, it's hard to componentize that. I think sometimes we see someone wants to add that, we put it on the homepage, but then it requires some kind of hard coding of things because the transitions only work if you have the right combination of components. So it can kind of limit the flexibility in the end.
I find it useful for large paragraphs of text, or not necessarily large, but people don't even like to read a sentence or two. But sometimes you can have it's at a reading pace as they scroll, and it kind of keeps their attention a little bit.
Yeah, if you think about some of those key pieces of content, let's say it's a program page, and it does follow a little bit more of a template, and then you can work on the animation because you know that, okay, you're going to have requirements, and then you're going to have this little student spotlight, and you want to make the student spotlight seem more fun. Then maybe it makes more sense, but it's also a page where
a subtle image is zooming in a little bit instead of a hover to make it zoom, stuff like that.
Yeah, but then if you say, oh, we're going to have our images have this little zoom, then if you don't realize, actually someone could make a page where there's 20 images like that, and then it's too much.
And have to crop and the zoom.
I think it's hard to do well. Yeah. I don't know, Jesse, do we have any sites that have the best animation?
The best, of course they are. I know that some sites are very subtle. I think that's a key point. It's very subtle. You don't always notice it's there. We do have some that are really storytelling, sort of single page animations that takes into account the full animation as you scroll down. Was it sold to 100?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll check it out.
Yeah, we have some non-higher ed examples, but we can find me later and I'll.
Strive for it.
Yeah.
Get it in.
You had another question?
What kind of coding went into these sites? Would you build a WordPress Drupal, and then how much coding did you have to put in behind it, like PHP coding?
Oh, so much. They're all these projects I've shown, I'm pretty sure. Well, most of them are projects that we built out of Evolving Web, and they're all WordPress and Drupal. And then in terms of how much work, it really varies a lot because when we're defining at first what the needs are, it can take a really long time because you decide to have fewer options and you decide to have less content. And so sometimes making those decisions is more the time-consuming thing rather than the coding of it. And then also a lot of work goes into making sure that aligns with a good content authoring experience. I didn't talk as much about governance today as I sometimes do. But yeah, the control over things for example, to make a page accessible, even if it's a landing page, you still need to have certain metadata, you still have to have certain things appearing at the top of the page, you have to have a heading order that makes sense. And so you have to kind of control the outputs, even if the user is just dragging and dropping and moving stuff around. So those types of details I find are the things that can take a lot more time. And then just deciding what's in and out. Like we've also worked on projects, I don't think I showed an example today, but we took a website that already had a huge component library, but it was kind of not the components they needed. And because they already had a lot of content, it can take longer to do a process like this, because you can't just assume that you blow all that content away. You have to take that existing legacy content into account when you're building the new tools. Yeah.
Where in the journey map do you think it's best to do like lead generations or like a request for more information?
Oh, that's a good question. It can really go into a lot of places because, I showed a few examples from this design school that we worked with, and one thing that really came out right away was that because you have to have a portfolio to apply to a design school, so for them, it wasn't so much about getting a lot of applicants, it was like, can people actually do a good portfolio that reflects what they know? And then can that kind of help match them to a good program? Like, are they applying to the right thing? Because sometimes someone would apply, they were great, but they weren't in the right program because you don't know what to pick especially for design. Like, they all just kind of seem like, yeah, I just want to do design, but you have to pick something. And so having this kind of portfolio prep workshop, which is pretty early in the journey, was useful. But then it also came into play later, like it could be something that you go to a couple times or even. So like they had this one thing, but it actually needed to go into a few different places. And yeah, some people are eager, they're gonna wanna do like the view book right away, come to a campus visit 2 years in advance. And then other people, it's really more about the selection. Like, I think Robert Kada is speaking at some point today, and he likes to talk about, it's not just how many leads you think you get at the beginning, it's like carrying that through to the whole journey. So like acceptance and like success of the student in the end is useful. So if there's certain lead gen things you're doing that are more useful for that step in the process, then at that point, you might already have, right, like if they've applied, of course, you have their email address, so you can send them something more personalized. Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about program phases we were talking about, templates, buttons, flexibility.
Yeah.
We're actually going through that process right now, and is there sort of a threshold where flexibility stops, or are there certain components you should just say, this is fixed?
Yeah, usually in a content management system, you can say, here are the fields, or here are here's the content that has to be there. And then you have maybe an area that provides that flexibility, and that has, maybe, it doesn't have to, like, you never have to say, like, oh, you can use any component anywhere. Like, it could just be, you have a couple different types of building blocks, because maybe some programs, they have more images, or some programs, they have more content that's descriptive, or maybe they have like some exciting professors that they want to highlight there. So like just kind of honing in on the really specifics of like what are the fields that have to be there could be helpful. It's hard if you're coming, especially like if you're trying to amalgamate things and put more heterogeneous set of programs into a cookie cutter. Maybe AI could be helpful with that to kind of like parse through and see like what are the outliers and have some examples.
Everyone's unique, yeah, of course.
Sorry.
Because everyone's unique, so you have to figure out.
Yes. Yeah, and then it can be hard to get academics to engage in that type of process too. So you have to give them a framework, like. Yeah. But showing them what works maybe is helpful. Like look, this is the program and this page, like this is why it works and this is how it has to be. But then, yeah, giving them a little bit of opportunity to give some input. Well, Well, thanks everyone for coming. I hope this is a good start to the day, and I'll see you all in the hallway. Some more questions.